12 hours the new starter has rested on the bench, and then 12 hours on a heat pad. There are signs that it lifted to the very lid. Now it started collapsing. The spoon has been completely swallowed up. The flour that was on the top has been incorporated, and yeah, bubbles. With the rye starter awakened and built, rejuvenated, next step is starting to build the dough. So the Baltic Rye method would be, in this case, I'll be using water in 2 stages. First stage build, and then in the second stage build. That's a total water of nearly 2 liters, and that's the total flour. So with this total water and this total flour, I can figure out that my dough hydration will be 85%. That's approximately. I will be adding some malt, which is also a dry ingredient, but then balancing that with some molasses. But overall it's 85% hydration recipe. So back to the first stage of building the dough. I'll boil this amount of water and I'll use this amount of flour, but in this case, instead of 500 grams pure flour, I'll use cracked rye. And I'll boil the water, which means the first stage in this case will be a scalded grain. You can scald also flour. I just like more fiber in the recipe, so that will be more grainy. Cracked rye, certified organic. Here's measured out 500 grams of cracked rye. The starter I won't be using at this first stage of dough building, so that can just sit and wait. I just starting with a scald and a kettle of boiled water. The kettles usually go in 1,700 grams, so I'm just putting a full kettle of boiling water. I can't put the sourdough in here starter because of course the hot water will kill it. Yeah, so I just scalded the initial rye and we'll leave it covered. For approximately 3 to 4 hours until it comes down to 36 degrees to be safe for adding a starter and second stage of building the dough. 6 hours later, all the water has been absorbed by the cracked grain of the flour. Temperature 35, perfect for adding the starter. The starter going into the scalded rye. I have just tasted the starter and it's very sour. Very sour. So mixing it in. Note there is no salt added, nothing, so it's really now scalded flour acting as a food source to the starter. Mix everything well in, and this will sit overnight, so another 18 hours until this whole becomes sour starter. And then the scrapings of the starter, just added water, Need a starter water, add some rye flour, and that will sit on the bench for a couple of hours, after which it will go to the fridge to live there for 2 or 3 weeks. This is still very runny. That's more like it for long preservation in the fridge, less hydration. The starter paste ready for preservation in the fridge, covered with flour to prevent the mold spores settling in. That's it. Okay, the following morning, it's 18 hours since I mixed in the sourdough into the scald, and remember these 250 grams of water that I set aside? Yeah, so that is making salt dissolve better. So I'll just add, check in some caraway seed, and here's the scalded flour with the starter, 18 hours old, and as you can see it has very much liquefied because the sourdough makes things more liquid. It breaks up the carbohydrates. And I'm adding the soup with the salt, etc. Mixing it in. Well, actually with this liquidity there wouldn't be any problem to dissolve the salt even without the soup, but that hot soup helps to soften up the caraway seed and the malt. Now remember the flour. So we used 500 grams of flour or cracked rye to scald. Now we have 1700 grams of flour to add. Adding in the flour. There will be another bowl like this. So that's only half of the flour. And all flour added, the mixing starts. First with a wooden spoon, and then by hand. I scraped off the spoon with a scraper, very handy tool, and now start mixing by hand. Yeah, been mixing for half a minute or so. I reckon this dough is a bit too soft, too pliable, so I'll add another 200 grams or so of flour. More flour added. Circular motion, lifting the dough from the bottom and then pushing it with a fist. Circular motion of the vessel, of the thing that I'm using. Okay, now this feels a bit more denser, how it should be. using the scraper, and now the dough is coming good. Well, the dough is now on the softer side, but I think it will be alright, it will hold. It wouldn't hurt putting more flour, but I'm just running out of time to catch a train. So, yeah. Oh, that's fine. And now the control like indicator for the rising. Yep, I will leave this and we'll see what it looks like in 3 hours. And now it's 8 hours since the final dough was put together. So that control check hole completely gone. It's all risen, I think tripled in size, and now it will be shaping and baking. Yeah, hydration of the dough was too high. I think the recipe I used was where all of the flour is either grain flakes or flaked grain or cracked rye. So in this case, free-form, the bread gets a bit flat, but baking in a tin is fine.